Good evening. My name is Thurman Greco, and this is the Let's Live with Thurman Greco show, coming to you from scenic downtown Woodstock on educational television, channel 23, and also coming to you from Let's Live with Thurman Greco on YouTube. And we have a wonderful guest here with us this evening. And I have to be perfectly honest, it has taken months to convince this guest to join us. We have a woman who knows about Lyme disease, and there's so much out there that is contradictory. There is so much out there to learn about Lyme disease that I feel very, Woodstock as well as the YouTube audience is really going to benefit from your visit. So can you start off by telling people your name?
Okay, Barbara Adrian Rosen.
And you have been having some experiences with Lyme disease throughout the years.
Well, I've been researching it for 13 years, researching and writing about it for half of that time.
And because of that, we are so anxious to have you with us. What was the first thing that you learned about Lyme disease?
Let's see, I learned that it was tick-borne. Many years ago, in a gardening magazine, I had read that there was one form of arthritis, one form that could be cured by antibiotics. And I heard about it then, but nothing sank in until 13 years ago, because I was in my garden, I was in my compost. I'm a hiker, and I don't know exactly where it came to me 13 years ago, but something told to me, scared me to death. And when I'm scared of something, I try to understand it. So I started researching it for myself. And that's when this began. And after a while learning about it, and writing about it, I realized that I had to share this with the community. And that sharing went beyond this community. It went to New Paltz, it went to Socrates, it spread, just the writing.
You know, the thing about Lyme disease is a lot of people don't know anything about it. And then all of a sudden they realize they've got it. And you can't just pick up a pamphlet.
No.
So if you have Lyme disease, you have to become an authority on it.
Well,
is that true?
In my opinion, it is, because many regular medical doctors are not Lyme literate. They're not Lyme literate. And sometimes they deny what you have, or they won't give you the right amount of antibiotics, which is doxycycline. I always have 3 weeks of doxycycline available to me. And I have something else called Lyme Formula, which is herbal. It's 19 different herbs. Not only does it address the Lyme bacteria, but it addresses the co-infection like Babesia, Bartonella, Chlamydia. I know about 12 of the co-infections, which you can read about in this fabulous book. So it addresses that. And if you can't get the doctor you have to give you what you need, this is a really great alternative. Although my own insecurity about Lyme disease also wants to take doxycycline. Because when you're first bitten, when the bacteria comes into your body, doxycycline kills bacteria. And after sometimes a very short time, the bacteria turns to a spirochete. And then you're on a different journey when there are spirochetes in your body. It's the next stage after the bacterial stage. So the sooner you deal with this, the more opportunity you have to eradicate it.
Is something like taking several bouts of doxycycline? Say you get bitten by a tick and you take, what, a 3-week thing of doxycycline?
That's what I would do.
And then a year or two later, you get bitten again. Would you take another 3 or 6 weeks?
I would.
Yes, okay. So taking doxycycline intermittently throughout your life is something you have to do if you're going to hang out in your garden.
No.
Oh, okay.
So that is not for me. Growing up, my parents avoided doxycycline. They avoided antibiotics as often as possible. They used to say it's better that you're sick a week longer than you take antibiotics. Antibiotics are great for emergencies, but as a steady diet, it will destroy your immune system.
Okay.
And having a strong immune system is part of the battle. You need to eat very healthy food, keep your immune system as strong as possible, and it will fight the symptoms in a better way. So I hope I answered your question.
No, I'm just trying to find out.
But along with doxycycline, you can alternate that with a probiotic, because doxycycline wipes out the good bacteria in your body. You need to replenish it. So, after you take doxy, 3 hours later you might take a probiotic. Then maybe you take doxy 3 times a day. You have to make sure that you balance that somehow. Don't take it with the antibiotic, because it will counteract the effect. But you don't want to destroy your immune system. So, and also, I always have the Lyme formula on hand. I always have that.
How did you find the Lyme formula?
I went looking. We have a health food store with all these herbal remedies. And herbal remedies, there must be something. There are many herbs that can help with Lyme disease and its co-infections. Many different herbs. We don't know half of them. There's so much medicine around us. Somebody once took me on a walk of my own property. All these weeds, they're good for us at a certain time in a certain dose. I mean, many of them will kill us if we just pick them up and eat them. There's a way to use every remedy we have around us. And a lot of the pharmaceutical companies have took that knowledge and made it into a product that we buy instead of having knowledge of what's around us. So I hope I've answered.
Oh, yeah. I think that's true. I think that sometimes something can get so complicated that you do have to rely on somebody else's expertise.
It's a combination. There are some good Lyme literate doctors available. They are available. But in my experience, the regular MDs or the assistant physicians paid for by insurance companies do not usually pay for Lyme literate doctors. So that's a problem. Now, I get Medicare, and the best lab for testing Lyme disease and its co-infections is IGeneX. Now, IGeneX will take Medicare, So when you need to get tested for one of the co-infections or Lyme disease, IGeneX takes Medicare. May not take your insurance, but it takes Medicare, which is a real plus for this lab, because some of the tests are very expensive. But they're 99% correct. Whereas the Alicia, what is it, the two tests we have now, one is the Alicia, I can't remember the other one, they're 50% accurate. It depends on when you take them. You know, if the antibodies are not in your body yet, the first test that we generally give will not find Lyme disease. You may still have it, but the antibodies are not around yet. They're not working yet. So it depends on when you take the two standard tests we have. They're only 50% accurate, which is not good enough for me.
So when do you take the tests in order for them to be better than 50% accurate?
You take them after a couple of weeks of when you think you've been bitten. But that's a couple of weeks of crucial time. So it's just not good enough for me, because I'm very exacting about...
So what is good enough for you, girl?
The moment I have any question, this is for myself.
Okay.
The moment I have any question for myself, I would take doxycycline and I would take the Lyme formula.
At the same time?
At the same time. Remember, I'm only a researcher.
Right.
I have no degree in
right.
anything.
That's...
I'm only a researcher, so...
That's why you're here.
Everybody has to realize that I'm no authority. I've just been researching for 13 years.
But you know, it's my experience that if you have Lyme disease, you have to become a researcher.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Then you're not, at that point, it doesn't matter what kind of letters you have behind your name or where you went to school. What matters is what you find out.
You know, that's true. But here's another problem. I was brought up on quality food.
Right.
Quality food. My father knew a lot about medicine. He just liked biology. He studied.
Yeah.
So I grew up in a certain kind of household. We didn't have junk food. If we ate bread, it was really good bread. I just didn't eat junk. I mean, certain things were instilled in me. And let's say I have a day where I eat a lot of junk. I know I'm eating a lot of junk because I want to. I'm taking a vacation. But I know what the right thing to do is for my body, just for my background. If you have an American diet and you've been brought up a certain way, you don't have that background. So I was very lucky in having a certain kind of background. No antibiotics unless it was an absolute emergency. Special kinds of meat. I ate meat until I was 20. So really quality meat. You know, my family ate kosher meat. I was just very lucky in who my parents were and how I grew up.
You know, I think age does play a part in this, because
Definitely,
I too
definitely.
grew up before, and when I go to a physician's office and I sit in the waiting room and I see people who are not eating food. They are eating products that have been manufactured for them to chew and swallow, but it's not food. And you can tell by looking at them. People didn't look that way when I was, but then I'm an octogenarian, so, you know, it wasn't until the 50s that we began to have, you know, non-food commodities to eat. And so, and if you do the history, you can go back to, you can push it back to a name. But I think it's important that we do eat properly. And let me ask you something. How important is it to have a vegetarian diet these days?
Well, I don't think it's for everyone. First, I did it because I had moved up to San Francisco and I had no kitchen. So I ate a lot of fruits and vegetables. I mean, it was a gradual thing. I didn't decide one day to become a vegetarian. It was a gradual thing. And I also realized I felt better. I really felt better. I felt much lighter. I don't mean weight-wise. I mean, maybe it was San Francisco, which was an amazing place when I lived there. But it just like, I think I moved better. I think I just liked it better, even though I grew up on really great meat. So it was a gradual thing.
Do you think it's possible to get really great meat now?
Yeah, if you have the money for it.
Really?
Well, yes.
Okay.
I mean, you could get natural chicken. I don't know what that means. I don't know what natural means exactly. You know, I don't know what the labels really mean. It's good to have money to buy the food you need.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is good.
Yeah.
And so when you
But still, people could eat better than they do, even if they don't have a lot of money. You could replace the foods you usually eat with something better than a lot of the garbage you can get.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. When you go, do you eat yogurt?
I do.
Because I know that it's always interesting to me how I stand at the grocery store and I see all of these different products, and then you start reading labels and you realize, okay, this isn't food.
They have so much
This
sugar
isn't
in them.
right, and other things that you can't even pronounce, you know.
Yeah.
And this isn't, you know.
So
And-
I eat plain yogurt and I put in
whatever
I like. Fruit. I love maple syrup, which is not so great sometimes. But I make my own. You know, I do buy plain yogurt.
Yeah. And this is also, I believe that in the Hudson Valley we have the best food available.
We have great food here. We're so fortunate. We're so fortunate for all kinds of reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, to be surrounded by beauty, by trees. You know, we don't know how lucky we are. I mean, I have such gratitude for living in a place like this. I grew up in a housing project in uptown Manhattan. We weren't allowed to walk on the grass. So I feel very lucky to be here.
Yes. So now that we're talking about these things, how do we get back to Lyme disease? How do you know you have Lyme disease? What makes you suspect that you have Lyme disease?
Well, there are symptoms. There's achiness. You know, people react to a tick bite in different ways. I have a friend who got a high fever right away. She was in her garden. She got a high fever that night. And it's actually a local town store, the owner of a local town store. And in her store, I had been talking about Lyme disease. I don't think this had anything to do with me, her realizing that she had Lyme disease, but there was a lot of talk about it a couple of years ago. I don't hear so much talk right now. So some people get a high fever. They feel achy right away. They get flu-like symptoms. people react in all kinds of ways depending on what your own personal ecosystem is like. So I can't, 30% of the population, only 30% get a bullseye. Many people don't even know they got a tick bite. You do have to do tick checks, like after you come in from a hike or from a garden, you have to do tick checks. So I can't tell you every way people can recognize it. Doctors certainly don't recognize it very often. You have to pay attention to your body. You know, how you're feeling, what's going on with it.
So what do you do when you realize or you feel like you've been bitten by a tick? What do you do?
Well, okay, let's say I didn't have access to doxycycline. Maybe I would go to emergency 1. I think they're better than a regular doctor about giving out the right amount of antibiotics. I'm not positive about that. There are infectious disease doctors around. There's Dr. Tack and Dr. Cutler. There is a doctor in New Paltz who is a chiropractor and deals with Lyme disease. There are several doctors in the area who could help you, who could get you what you need. But I also have the Lyme formula. I have 2 or 3 bottles around because sometimes a friend of mine just found a tick. They can't get to a doctor for a while. Have the Lyme formula.
And take it then.
Take it because it won't hurt you.
Mm-hmm.
It could really help you.
Mm-hmm.
There are other things that can help if you think you have Lyme disease. There's an array of things. Just be aware of your body. Keep your immune system strong.
Why is it that you think people do not talk about Lyme disease so much anymore?
You know, I'm puzzled by that. Somebody helps me with my garden. He said he's been bitten 35 times this summer by ticks. 35 times. I don't know. COVID took its place as something to be fearful about. You know, I'm more aware that COVID is reemerging, which I'm not afraid of anyway. I'm more aware of that than I am about Lyme disease. When I was writing about it, it seemed like everybody was talking about it. Everybody. You know, my son worked in a bike shop. All the bikers were getting bitten when they were going through the woods. You know, they had different remedies. They would put, as a repellent, they would put Dr. Bronner's peppermint soap in their hair because that's a repellent. They would spray themselves. So there was a lot of talk about it a few years ago. You hear more talk about the grisly stuff than you do about what is directly affecting us now.
You know, that's very interesting. You mentioned peppermint, and I know that several years ago, I was trying to figure out what is something that I can do. And I realized that the only thing that I can do is plant as much peppermint as possible. And my garden, which is not large, is mostly peppermint.
You probably won't find any ticks in your garden because of that. I'm not afraid to walk.
I have not.
I'm not afraid to walk through my herb garden now because I have so many herbs in it that are repellents.
Well, I don't have an herb garden. I have 12 different kinds of peppermint. I mean, that's it. I don't have anything else because I figured out that was for me, I figured out that was probably the most effective thing to do because I didn't really want to do pesticides.
Yes.
You know, I am as much concerned about pesticides as I am. And your comment about the chiropractor, that's, you know, chiropractors are amazing people. They truly
Excuse
are.
me.
Oh, that's okay, Barbara. It's just, you know, it's the end of the summer. But they, you know, chiropractors are amazing. People do not realize how many talents that chiropractors build in a lifetime, in a career. And of course, they're all different. Just because a person is a chiropractor doesn't mean that he knows about Lyme disease, but this
Yes.
one does. So what are some symptoms of Lyme disease, say after 2 weeks or something?
Well, fever, chills, aches, a fever.
And then what happens? You go to the doctor and then?
Maybe they'll give you 2 doxycycline pills. That's what they'll do. Then you have to go on. One of my doctors said to me, he only gives 2 doxycycline pills. He said, well, they never come back again. Why don't they come back again? He didn't do anything for them.
They went somewhere else.
They went somewhere else. You know, there's also one other thing I wanted to mention, which is very important. There's an herb called Cistus and Canis, or rock rose. I make it as a tea every morning, and it's an internal repellent for ticks and mosquitoes. An internal repellent.
So what you're saying is, if you drink a cistus tea, you smell bad for a tick.
For a tick.
Yeah.
For a tick. It's also called rock rose in this country. You smell bad for a tick. It repels ticks and mosquitoes. And that is another important protection that I have a list here of things I had to mention.
Well, where do you find the cistus?
I would order it from Linden Botanicals, online from Linden Botanicals.
So you don't get it local.
Or BioPure. One store had it local, and the second time I went back, it was already a year old. The store wasn't air conditioned. Too old for me.
Right.
So I went online, and I ordered it from I ordered it from Linden Botanicals and then BioPure.
Okay.
And I always ask for this year's harvest.
Do you think it makes a difference? You think you get this year's harvest?
I do, because last year I sent back one, and then this year's harvest came on sale, and I sent the first one back and got the next one, because I wanted this year's harvest.
When is this year's harvest?
I think maybe it was at the end of the summer.
So this would be this year's harvest now, because it's at the end of this.
Yeah, and I want people to ask for this year's harvest, to have it as fresh as possible. I like herbs to be as fresh as possible.
Yes.
And know how to make the tea. So there are directions, specific directions. And Cistus and Canis will also help you if you have Lyme disease already. It will also help your symptoms. Besides being a repellent before you have it.
So that's a daily tea is something that might help. You think of it as possibly a vitamin or something that helps.
Yes, yeah. It has something in it, that helps your body. Yeah.
And then you talk about the doxycycline. My chihuahuas have died, so I'm not there anymore. But for years, with the dogs, I got to know a lot of people who know animals professionally, and people who have dogs, they know the symptoms of a dog that has Lyme disease. Yeah. And they contact the vet and they get the doxycycline immediately.
Well, they get, okay, maybe, yes, maybe they do. I don't have a dog. But there is a vaccine for dogs for Lyme disease.
I remember in Virginia, this goes back a long way, back in the beginning of the 90s, one of the drug companies, veterinary drug companies, had manufactured a Lyme injection for dogs for Lyme disease. And they also had a Lyme disease inoculation for humans. And they didn't get much of a response and they dropped it. So
well, I know somebody who got it and she got Lyme disease. So there was something about it that was not effective.
Yeah.
So I don't know what went on there. You know, I like to research what to do, how to empower, in my case, how to empower myself, how to empower other people by giving them some things they can really do. And I also want to mention, there are two Lyme-litter doctors that I want to tell you about. One is a doctor named Bloom, Dr. Bloom, and I believe he's in Spring Valley. And the other is Mark Jordan of the Healing Arts, and he's in New Paltz. And they're both chiropractors, and they're Lyme literate. Their personalities are a little flaky, but they know their stuff.
You know, as a healer, I find that we describe a person's personality as a little flaky when they really get involved in going down one healing lane. It affects your vocabulary. It affects your attitude toward life in general. I don't have any problem with flake.
Okay.
That just shows me a person who's really into the situation. And you know, with Lyme disease, you're not going to get, you have to have a holistic healer. You have to have someone who specializes in Lyme disease. You're not going to get a regular one. I would imagine that if I were to go up to Albany Med, I would find a physician who was working on that. But in
there is a local physician who is actually Lyme literate, and I think he works in Kingston. I don't remember his name, but there actually is a Lyme literate true physician. I always think, when are doctors going to get this?
You have to find a physician. You know, a doctor works 60 hours a week.
Yes.
You know, they're on the road 5 o'clock in the morning. They're calling their patients up at 8 or 9 at night. Being a physician today, I don't know how anybody decides to be one, because it's an exercise in completely being overworked. And so I don't see it. But you find, you know, when you talk about Lyme disease, you find a physician who has an interest. It's the same thing as in oncology. I had my youngest daughter. I'm a breast cancer survivor. Both of my daughters are breast cancer survivors. We have had 3 different experiences. My youngest daughter in Arizona, at the moment that she realized that she had breast cancer, this oncologist took a hold of her, grabbed her by the elbow and took care of it. And the reason he did was because as a young man, his sister died from it. So he was motivated. His attitude toward breast cancer was far superior to my physician's and my other daughter's physician. And I interacted very closely with both of those because I went and stayed with both of my daughters throughout their healing. That guy, if a woman had breast cancer and showed up on his desk, he took care of it.
Yeah.
So you need to find that in Lyme disease. And if you have Lyme disease in your family, if you're a physician and your wife has Lyme disease, or your mother or your brother, you're gonna know. You're gonna do something. You're gonna say, "Hey, I'm a doctor. What am I gonna do?"
I like to believe that. However, one of my big concerns is that insurance companies are running the show.
Listen, I know doctors that hate the insurance company too.
The doctors I know who are really into healing, they are no longer with insurance. They won't take insurance.
I know that when I was in Virginia, and I had allergies, and I went to an otolaryngologist. I can remember him. I overheard a conversation in which he said, "Listen, hire this one. He's hungry," and he wanted somebody to collect money from the insurance companies. He had an opinion about it. And so he acted on that opinion. So that's what you need. That's what you need. And if abandoning the insurance company, it takes hours. They hire employees that do nothing but, process.
Insurance, yeah.
And that must be a terrible job.
I don't know about that. I just wish insurance companies were not running the show. The Lyme literate doctors I know of were really forced not to ask for insurance. They're very expensive.
They're forced out.
They're forced out of that. But if they continue to be doctors, they have to charge for their time.
Yeah.
They have no choice.
Yeah.
So they are pretty expensive. And when I started doing this, I thought, well, I don't have much money. What am I going to do? I went to, I think I was going to a doctor who took a certain insurance. So I really couldn't leave everything in the hands of the doctor.
No,
I really had to educate. It was almost out of necessity for me.
listen, when we are ill and we have something challenging our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual bodies, we have to take things in our own hands. If we can. Sometimes you're too sick and you can't.
That's right.
That's right. But you have to. You can't just leave it in. You just can't say, well, I'll just let Dr. So-and-so take care of it. Especially with women's health now.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't. You have to pay attention to what's going on. And women with children, pediatric situations, they've got to know about diet, they've got to know about medicine, they've got to know, and herbs, that's amazing. Those things are amazing, but you have to know about them.
You have to know what to do. So a lot of people in this country really don't.
They don't.
There's a lot of obesity, so many diseases. It doesn't have to be this way. It really doesn't have to be this way.
No.
Diseases have been around forever. Ticks have been around for over 1 million years. They have.
wow.
Oh yeah, they've been around for
And
a long
they've got the upper hand now.
Now they have the upper hand because if we've done what we have done to the environment, they definitely have the upper hand. So I hope we wake up. I hope people begin to wake up. This area is really fortunate because there are a lot of people who are interested in health. They're more open to good food. So this area is very fortunate in that. And even though I haven't thought that Kingston was a very good place for medicine, I was sick a year and a half ago, and I went through a lot of doctors, and I managed to come out with great doctors. I was very lucky. I was also very aggressive about what I needed, what I wanted. I was really scared because I had something very serious. And I found great people who it seemed like they took a real interest, and I think it was because of where I was coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue with them if I didn't agree with them. So I was lucky in many ways.
Well, and I think sometimes people will go in and the doctor is overworked and people in the
Yes.
waiting room, it's
Yeah.
just passing through. And I think beyond a certain age, they don't pay any attention.
You mean the older we are, the less attention they pay?
Mm-hmm.
I agree with that. I told the surgeon who got rid of my cancer, I said, it was a year and a half ago, and I told him, I have a big life to live, and I need a lot more time. And
Good for you.
A couple of days later, I got an emergency surgery to take out my kidney, which I hated to lose, but it saved my life. So.
That's important. But you had to convince that doctor.
Well.
Did you?
He was great.
But do you think that those remarks?
He knew that I meant business because when I first came in, he was very light and making a lot of jokes. And I said, look, I'm really scared. I don't know why this is happening. I really need help. I wasn't that friendly. I wasn't joking. I was scared.
And that was in Kingston.
And I was very aggressive. And I had refused the first doctor who they gave me. I knew I needed a CT scan. And so I asked him to write a prescription for a CT scan. But he wasn't going to operate on me because he just was too young, too inexperienced. But anyway, I'm sorry to digress. Let's get back to Lyme disease.
No, listen, Lyme disease is one thing, but it's our bodies,
Yes.
know? So yeah, let's get back to it.
So there are two other, not just Lyme literate, but they're infectious disease doctors that I want to mention. I think maybe I mentioned this, Dr. Tack and Dr. Cutler. They're in Kingston. And I guess he's an herbalist, Josh Boughton. He's in Kingston. You have to go online. I'm not sure how Lyme literate he is, but he really helps people. He uses excellent supplements. He knows a lot. So he's someone who I would use to make me healthy. He is pricey. So I just want to tell you that.
So he is an herbalist?
I think he's an herbalist. I'm not positive. But he's
Is he a nutritionist?
He knows about nutrition. He knows about nutrition. I haven't really investigated him. I have investigated other doctors. I haven't investigated this guy. But I know about him, and I know he's good at what he does.
Wow. Because herbs, when you work with herbs, you really are out there. It's the wild, wild west. you know?
And yet they're thousands of years old.
Yes,
The Chinese have been using them for 2,000 years.
if not more.
The Wild West. Okay, if that's what you want to call it.
Well,
But yes, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying.
you know, I was over at, I spend weekends at Mowers Meadow when they're open. And a woman came up to me and she sat down in a chair at my booth and she started talking. And I realized that she was a storehouse of information,
About?
herbs.
Oh.
And it was like, wow. You know, but these people are so few and far between.
Yeah. At the farmer's market on Wednesday.
No, you're now talking about that.
In Woodstock, there's a guy who sells mushrooms. His knowledge is so incredible. I mean, he has herbs that could definitely, he has mushrooms that could definitely help with Lyme disease. And I've bought a couple of them.
So it's possible to go up to him and mention Lyme disease?
And talk about Lyme disease. And he will tell you a lot of things, different ways to help yourself.
Would he be available for other situations, or is Lyme disease something that he's?
He knows about many different kinds of situations, medical situations. He is very good. I have bought Japanese knotweed from him and cordyceps, which are two. One is an herb. Japanese knotweed is an herb. Very invasive. People hate it, but it's one of the best herbs for Lyme disease. Japanese knotweed.
It's out here.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere, and we hate it, but it's here to help us. And the other is cordyceps, which I haven't really studied yet, but I know Japanese knotweed is one of the best, and it's in the Lyme formula that I recommend.
Listen, can we talk about that Lyme formula now?
Yeah, I should have brought one with me. It's, it's an essential herb, 19 different herbs in it. It's made by a great company. I interviewed them. They get wild herbs and they grow their own herbs. And if you need a special formula for something, they'll do it for you. If you know what you need, they'll help you with it. I couldn't get rid of a cough one year. They offered to make a special formula for me to deal exactly with what I had.
Wow.
So they're a very good resource. Ravencrest. You can look them up online.
Oh, that's the name of the company?
That's the name of the company, Ravencrest.
Ravencrest?
Yes.
Okay.
I met them. They came down here one year, and I actually talked to the owner. They're incredibly helpful.
What brought them down here?
Sunflower. They had distributors bring their products in to talk about their products. So I'm not going to say it. But yeah, through Sunflower I found them.
You have to be very knowledgeable of the person and of their connection to the individual product.
Yes. Yes, I agree with that.
So where did you begin? When you began your search, where did you go?
I think I went online. And then I started getting books. From the library. I got books from the library, all the books on Lyme disease I could find. I was also interested in the Rife machine that is illegal in this country, but it deals with over 250 diseases. I found a great book on it, how to use it for various illnesses, even bubonic plague. the Rife machine. They use it in Germany. It was invented in the 1930s, but was never approved by the health industry, by the medical industry. It was never approved. Antibiotics were just coming on the scene at that time. Very, very early antibiotics. And the Rife machine was a competitor of very early antibiotics. And so that kind of put an end to the Rife machine.
You know, there were a lot of things that came into being at that time that other things pushed them out.
Yes.
Reflexology was one.
Oh, really?
Yes, reflexology was very, very popular in this country. But then we had antibiotics, and the people who were using reflexology were not aggressive enough. You know, I mean, things were marching on.
Yeah, yeah.
People still use reflexology.
I know.
It still works.
I know.
And the same thing with Reiki. Reiki came after World War II, and there was a lot there, and it didn't get the publicity that it got in Japan. And besides that, I mean, you know, we had been at war with Japan. So there was all the political things, and it's still there. Reiki's holding its own. Reflexology's holding its own. That machine is holding its own.
Well, in other countries. But I know some people who have Rife machines in this country.
Yeah.
There's like an underground network of them.
Yes.
So here's something else that I learned in my studies. In the beginning of the 1900s, the Rockefellers invested heavily in the pharmaceutical industry. And in order for schools to get support from them, they had to go along with the Rockefellers and what they had invested in. And that's when the face of medicine really started to change. I mean, midwives were not used as much. Babies were born in hospitals, not at home. I'm glad my son was born in a hospital because I was an older mother, you know, first time. I'm glad I was in a hospital. But I had a midwife with me because I wanted a woman with me. So medicine changed because of heavy investment in the pharmaceutical industry. And the pharmaceutical industry has done a lot to help us, but a lot of the time it's been more financial for them and less help for us. I mean, everybody's on medical stuff now. You know, it probably prolongs our life. I don't know.
Statistics do not prove that out.
That what?
It does not prolong our lives. Our life expectancy is now lower than it has been in decades.
Well, that's because of our eating habits.
Well, and you know, you
It's
go
for a lot of
you go
reasons.
into the doctor, they expect you to be ill. You know? They really do.
Huh. Well, I go to the doctor when I have a reason, usually.
Yeah.
When I think that something is up with me, that's when I go to the doctor.
That's the best kind.
Yeah.
That's the best thing to do. Listen, I think we're getting a little bit short here. We haven't even begun this conversation, have we? No, have we?
So, no, we haven't. In this book, there were certain areas of it that I read over and over again, and other areas that I hardly touched because it takes me a long time to understand something. So even this evening, I was reading the very beginning of this book, and there was so much in it that I had no idea about. So we have only touched on the surface, but I hope I've given people enough information so that they can take more control of what's going on with their lives. Listen to their bodies more. If they don't know how to eat better, go to a nutritionist. Find out what you need.
I think the main thing that you've done in your first visit is, we're down to 5 minutes. I knew we were getting short. Is you have allowed people, by listening to you, to realize that they're not alone. And that if they feel alone, they can do something about it.
Yes, they can.
So many people shrug their shoulders and say, oh, well. Oh, well. And you have given them an option. You haven't necessarily sent them down the street, but you have said to them, you can have a different attitude.
So here's something else that I want to talk about. This is going to be on, what is it going to be on?
YouTube.
YouTube, I'm sorry. I don't use YouTube that much. I should use it more. This is going to be on YouTube, and it's going to be shown 2 or 3 times a day for the next week.
Well, what's good? Actually, it will not.
Oh.
But it's going to be on YouTube. Usually, these shows are, get some public awareness.
It's going to be on Channel 23.
They go on Channel 23, but they will go to YouTube. This show will go to YouTube, and you can bring it up on. You can bring it up on demand.
Oh.
And when you go to and I have to tell you, I know nothing about YouTube. I take the discs and I send them to a woman that I've known for years in Washington State, and she does whatever she does. I have no idea what it is, and she puts them on. But these shows have been going on. Have been going on for 15 years, more or less.
Okay.
So.
And also Channel 23, is that what's going to be shown 2 or 3 times a day this
Channel 23 does, are we running out of time?
No, Channel 23, you can't put it on next week. The week after it'll be on.
Oh.
Okay, so it does go on.
Okay.
And so if you go to Channel 23, you can see this.
Okay.
And then it goes to YouTube.
Okay, so here's what I'm asking people to take what they've learned tonight and tell their friends about it. Spread this.
Yes.
Many people don't have a clue. Spread it as far as you can.
And many people shrug their shoulders because it's more than they can cope with. That's very true.
But this is something you can actually do.
You can help yourself.
You can help yourself, and you can help your friends and family.
That's very true. And thank you so much, because we're down to nothing. Thank you very much. We're down to 2 minutes. Thank you very much, Ellen. We are so grateful for what all you have done.
Thank you.
Thank you, darling.
Say good night, sweetie.
Good night, Ellen.
Good night.
Good night to your audience.
Good night. Thank you for watching the show.